friends, because anyone who's interested in thinking is my friend. And I suppose if you're my friend, I'll have to confess that, yes, I did throw my wet leg out of the bed and fall out of bed because I didn't know I had a left leg. And doing my PhD and writing many books, I've done it all with left neglect, and I've typed the letter next to the one I want, maybe 6 times in every row. So that's one story. And another story is, really, I'm only here because of a bit of string. When I was about 5, my mum grew fabulous roses, and they were her favourite thing. And it's really interesting. One morning we were walking down the path to go to school, and one of the rose bushes had blown over in the wind. And we needed another rose bush, another piece of string to tie the rose bush back. We went inside. There was no string in the kitchen drawer, no string in the garage, and no string in the back shed. Can you imagine what I saw on my way home from school? A piece of string. I found a bit of string in the gutter, and I picked it up, and I took it home, and I proudly presented it to Mum, who totally overacted. So at the age of 5, I thought the thing my mum loved most in the whole world were pieces of string. Consequently, I found string everywhere, and until we had a back shed totally festooned with string. But that's a really important thing to know. Because to open up our mind's potential, first of all, we have to know what we're looking for, and then we have to be really, really busy trying to find it. I was on top of the world 22 years ago. I just returned from speaking at an International Philosophy for Children conference in Mexico. And one particular evening stands out in my mind. My husband Ted and I were swimming in this teardrop-shaped pool high above the jungle, and the water turned pink from the reflected sunlight. And 1,000 swallows flitted down to drink, and I thought, oh, isn't life wonderful? Our 4 kids are nearly grown up. Just adore my job teaching. And I knew what string I was looking for. Now it's time for me, I thought. I'll write my book, my career will take wings, when bang. I was on my way into Melbourne University when a gentleman flew out a side street, bashed into the back of my car, and I left me there. Many, many, many times later, I returned to life at a crawl, with a broken body, broken bones, broken brain, broken life, and most importantly, broken spirit. I was totally finished. I thought I was totally locked in this maze of my mind, because back 22 years ago, you were told there was no cure for brain injury. We hadn't discovered plasticity of the brain then. So I was trapped and lost in myself. My understanding had gone, my ability to walk, talk, or think properly, my vision, I've still got double vision, my balance, my memory. So I was no one. But now, 22 years later, I see that my challenges were more like a labyrinth, like an opportunity to reflect and learn and make sense. And you know what I've learned? I've learned that the plasticity of the brain plus the plasticity of the human spirit boost our potential. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about unlocking my brain, and this rostrum here is so that you're all anchored, because I've got double the number of people I'm speaking to, and you're all jumping around, so it's quite exciting. And also I'm looking at a clock, which is a countdown clock, and I don't understand numbers, and I thought it was going to be very simple, but it isn't, so I'll take off my watch and keep an eye on my watch, because my numbers are pretty terrible. So first of all, I'm going to talk about awakening my mind, getting insight, ideas and hope, tapping into the power of the mind, turning snakes into ladders, and then I'm going to give you 2 tools to help us work things out. I don't know if you've ever had your world turned upside down. I think Lewis Carroll just wrote Alice in Wonderland so that we could understand brain injury, because that's what it's like. Alice fell down that long perpendicular tunnel when I was sucked along the long horizontal tunnel until I came into the light on the other side. And I've never been so disappointed in my whole life. was to find myself back on the ceiling in intensive care watching the doctors work on my body. But I came back from that light with a very firm conviction that the most important thing we own are our own thoughts. And from that, I came to the conclusion that it was up to me to try and discover the secret of thinking. Not bad when you're unconscious, is it? Alice said to the caterpillar, I can't explain myself because I'm not myself. It's pretty scary when you're not yourself. I wanted to get out of hospital because I thought when I was home I'd find me. But when I was home I couldn't find me. I couldn't even know where the tap was. So then, like an idiot, I thought if I got to school I'd find me at school. So it was really interesting trying to find yourself. And unfortunately you don't understand anything and people seem to be doing and saying crazy things. You know, I know what about looking for string. Well, I knew what string I wanted. I wanted magic medicine like Alice had to say drink me to make me back to normal. As well as having a mum who grew roses, I had the most wonderful dad in the whole world. And from the age of about 4, Dad would take me on thinking walks. And he'd discuss politics, opera, current affairs, stuff that went over my head. But because Dad told me about the importance of thinking and got me thinking, that really helped me. And it made me understand that the power of our mind or thinking is the magic medicine that can turn our snakes, things that hurt us, into ladders. Now, I talk about snakes because my dad was a great fisherman. And you realise, of course, with brain injury, I was just a little child again, learning to walk and talk. I still couldn't feed myself. I didn't know where my mouth was and I'd choke and so forth. And Dad used to say to me, "Chick, nil desperadum, never give up hope." So even though all the doctors told me you will improve for 6 months, then 2 years, and that's it, Dad's words stuck in my mind. And he was a great fisherman, and he used to say to me, "Chick, if you've got problems, it's like a can of worms. Tip them out." But I thought, actually, my problems were more like a bag of snakes. And I had to find my snakes, and I had to look at them one by one and try and find a way around them. So that's what I did. So, the first problem was, of course, Dad's wise words. Once you can state a problem, you can solve it. And I really couldn't state any of my problems. And I had to learn to think my way through it all. There was a hate snake. I hated and loathed myself. And it took me a long time to learn that you had to learn to be your own best friend. There was a revenge snake. I really wanted to get the man who'd done it to me. Until one day, I realised that I was really enjoying hating this man, and I was having a shower with Paris soap, and Ted gives me Paris soap every year for my birthday, and I think, isn't this a luxury we can afford? And I realised hating the man was a luxury I couldn't afford. Then there was a small snake. This little tiny titchy snake here, it's really revolting. And we think it's nothing, but it is. My daughter Anne said to me, "Mum, you've been in the house too long. You've been in hospital, you've been in the house, I'll take you to shopping town." And we got there, and I saw someone eating a pie. And I thought, oh, wow, I haven't had a pie for years. And Anne bought me a pie, and within a second I was covered in pie. And to my horror, Anne ran away. And I thought, I'm ashamed of me too. I'd run away from me if I could. But she came back with napkins and wiped me up and took me home and put me to bed. And I was crying. And I was crying for 2 reasons. First of all, I was crying because I thought, this is just proof you're a stupid, rotten woman, crying over a bit of pie and kids are dying in wars. And then I realised the pie was a symbol that me, mother of 4, wiper extraordinaire of over 1,000 children, didn't know what to do. And I also realised that small things are important. Then there was a mirage snake where I thought my husband couldn't possibly love this loathsome idiot that I'd become. But one day I was picking some honesty, and the honesty spoke to me. And it said, "Go on, be honest with him." And I said, "Darling, you don't really love me." And he said, "What do you mean?" And you know, I had proof. Do you know, I thought people who loved you gave you a pat. That's all I wanted from him. He could send me to another doctor or get me another pillow, but he never gave me a pat. I said, darling, you've never given me a pat. He said, what? And that was the most marvellous thing, because that honesty allowed us the energy to climb the ladder. So I was so frightened and bewildered, and 22 years ago there was no internet, nothing, no information about brain injury, so with my one finger on the wrong notes, keys, I tapped away, and I said to him one day, darling, I've written a book. And he said, no, you haven't. I said, yes, I have. And I gave it to a literary agent, and blow me down if Penguin didn't sign me up the next week. So that was really wonderful, so I wrote Doing Up Buttons. But then came the hard part of going on telly, and I didn't know what I'd written a book about. So I'd write cues on my fingers, but then I'd get nervous and go to the loo and wash my hands. So I'd make this little button, and I'd give one to Bert Newton or whoever else was interviewing me, and it tells a story of what it's like to have a challenge or a change or brain injury. The button stands for the importance of small things. The dotty, the gold thread for talking, because when we talk, we sort out our ideas. The dotty ribbon, which was a Christmas ribbon, to show we think we're dotty or mad. And the safety pin reminds me of Sherpas, all those people who help us, because my daughter went to Nepal trekking, and in those days you heard that the Sherpas liked safety pins, so she bought every safety pin in Melbourne, dragged a backpack off to Nepal only to find the Sherpas didn't like safety pins. So safety pins remind me of Sherpas. So since then I've realised that we need lots of Sherpas to help us climb our mountains. They do all sorts of things, and encouraging us is really important. And I've realised that we can use the power of our minds to climb our mountains, or be Sherpas and help others. So I've been invited to be a Sherpa and help lots and lots of different organisations by talking to them about brain injury to help them understand. And I've had lots of opportunities of chewing Mr Abbott's ear, being Victorian Senior Australian of the Year this year, and I've had Jenny Macklin launch my book and had lots of opportunities to write for various organisations. So I've been very fortunate helping people turn their snakes into ladders. So in doing all this, I've discovered a few tools. I returned to school trying to find me, but I couldn't see properly and I couldn't talk properly, but I started taking philosophy thinking workshops. And in the end, I took over 4,000 thinking workshops with kids. And I was really fortunate that when the book came out, and as you can see, it's been translated into Arabic and Chinese and all sorts of things, but Edward de Bono did the blurb for it, so I think it's really rather cute that someone who couldn't think suddenly could write a book that Edward could endorse. But I think it is vital, because of my dad got me thinking as an early age. That's why I've survived. We have to teach our children and our grandchildren and our students how to think. And of course we do that through their eyes, their heart and their funny bone, and that funny bone's really important. And I developed this tool, which I call handy thinking tools. The first thing we do, I chose a hand, didn't you? Because I had a hand with me all the time. And if we could make them symbols, we can unpack our ideas. We pigeonhole the idea. We point to the facts. Our middle finger's in the middle of our hand, like our heart's in the middle of our body, so we remind ourselves to find the feelings. Our ring finger is our judging finger. And we ask and look at the good, bad and curious things. And for our little finger, we ask ourselves, what if? And look at different scenarios. So I was doing lots and lots of talking, and I was often using my lovely doves, Lovey-Dovey and Cloud, and I had a cage I'd put them in to take them on telly, and I thought I could use their cage, and people kept saying, why don't you do a PhD? And I thought, I can't see properly, I can't write properly, I can't do a PhD. And anyway, people hate tests because they show our weaknesses. So I developed what I called keys to the brain injury cage. With my cage, and now my cage is about this big, and my darling husband took me to interview all my people, and we shove it in the car, and then we have to assemble it all. So what we have is, I've broken brain injury, something that's so complicated, into 3 stages. And we've got my walking stick with talk about cards, about our difficulties and differences that put us in the cage, how we feel locks us in the cage. But you can see there's a pole of the flying pig with lots of keys to get out of the cage. So what did I discover? I discovered that people with brain injury feel ashamed, afraid, and isolated. If you're a teacher, you realise if you're ashamed, afraid and isolated, you can't learn nothing. They're sad, mad and bad. But the good news, the keys are to never, 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 ever give up. Hope is most important, and that has many forms. Love is so important, and all my participants identified these things, and learning to face the facts and working things out and understanding. Some of my participants expressed these same thoughts. They now appreciate being alive. They're aware of their strengths and weaknesses, and they feel wise. I think I've shown that the plasticity of the human brain plus the plasticity of human spirit boosts the plasticity of our potential. I've discovered that we can turn our snakes into ladders. The triumph is made up of two words, try and umph. And by finding the right string, we can make pigs fly. The potential of our mind gives us hope. It helps other possibilities emerge. There's nothing like the peace that comes when you've got hope. I'm going to give you a piece of hope today on the book signing table. You'll find some of my hope stones. The stone is something very hard with a star on it to remind you that we can always find ways to tackle hard issues and reach for the stars. Thank you.
By the time we're 60, more than 90% of us will have known someone close to us who has suffered from some sort of a neurological disorder.
You all know you're not going to live forever. There's only one way into this life and one way out.
I cannot prove to you anymore that anything is possible.
Talk about the marvelous thing that we now understand about our brains.
It gets so much better.